time to get into yet another sci-fi game. This one got way back in the late 90s, and this is a sci-fi book role-playing game by White Wolf, the ones that created Hunter, The Reckoning, Werewolf, Vampire the Masquerade. So this is their entry into sci-fi. So originally it was known as Aeon, but since they ran into trouble with Aeon Flux, they renamed it Trinity. So they have like a small short story to kind of like kick off the kind of give you an idea of like the time sense. So now this is set in the 22nd century in the year 2120. So pretty much like 100 years in the future. So this first part, the colored section, it basically gives descriptions on like all the organizations, the and the timeline and of the 22nd century. So like Eon Trinity is sort of like an international group, philanthropic group that tries and brings humanity together. So now this is basically like you have little boxes of emails type of deals. So like brief descriptions, and so what this book is about is like I said, is set in the year 2120, and it's about what are known as scions. That basically they have psychic powers. So what it's all about is these psi orders that came out of hiding in the early 22nd century, and in the timeline, what had happened is these humans called aberrants were able to control quantum abilities. Had pretty much they're superhumans. Like you could picture people Batman, Superman, the Hulk, and so it gives a map of the world and where each of the psi orders are located. But these aberrants came out in the late 20th, early 21st century, and then eventually they had this gland in their brain that let them control the quantum, as it's known, and give them their superhuman abilities. Like I said, you can picture people like Superman, Batman, the Hulk, Wolverine. They had such great these great abilities and everything, and they started using it for the betterment of mankind. But eventually, it led to they lost control of their powers, and a lot of them went mad, and so pretty much it has a whole timeline right in here. So like I said, in the late 20th, early 21st century, the aberrants started proliferating, and it became the conflicts started growing. So they ended up what was known as the aberrant war, and so eventually the things led to this timeline in 2061. Basically, China becomes the pretty much the superpower of in this game, and they ended up ending the war in 2061, and of course that led to another Great Depression type of deal in the 2060s, and the aberrants were able to be chased off. So then it goes into the timeline on set this up. So these the psi orders become in existence, and then they early in the 22nd century they become public, and of course having gone through this aberrant war with a bunch of people with humans in a sense superhuman abilities. There was initially the backlash of them coming public, because okay, here's some more people that are superhuman. Are these people going to be bad just as the aberrants? So there's a whole setup once they became public. These psi orders that or with the people that are known as scions that have ability to psi, which in this, the way it's described as quantum mechanic, the quantum abilities that the aberrants have are on the atomic level, and the psi abilities that these science have are on the subatomic level. And so initially when they first become public, and they start integrating themselves in the organization known as Trinity, which is in a sense like I said, a philanthropic type of group that acts as in a sense like a, you could say like a UN type of deal in our timeline right now in real life, trying to bring people together, but it's also like an organization sort of like a, I would say like a sort of like the FBI, CIA type of organization with their abilities and their powers and stuff. But like and of course like there's also like we've made contact with aliens as well in like this timeline. So like this front section, in a sense, goes into like the whole. Uh, you can see like here like it goes into like details of like the different psi orders, and so like there's 7 of them. So like I'm gonna flip back to the map and everything. So there's like this several different of the psi orders, and each of them have like different abilities. So like the ministry is like kind of your like a telepath, and they're based in China. So and then like you got the Norca, which are kind of like your shapeshifters, and they're stationed down in South America. So they use abilities like the psi abilities to be able to control their body, so they can like get, in a sense like like I said, they become like in a sense shapeshifters. So like think of these people like your James Bonds type of characters. The Ministry, think of like your telepaths, sort of like maybe your Vulcans with their mind melds on pretty much on steroids. Orgitech is like the people who can use their psi abilities to control electronics and electricity. So like think of it like your ultimate hackers. So like the Upeo is teleporters. So like they can use psi abilities to in a sense teleport themselves like vast distances or over short distances. So you can think of like characters sort of like a Nightcrawler, and the legions, the legionnaires, they're like basically super soldiers, like on steroids. They can use their abilities to control fire and ice and telekinesis. But like with them, think of like like I said, the super soldiers on steroids, because not only can they control fire and ice and telekinesis, but they're pretty much like think of like your elite teams like Delta Force, Navy SEALs, Isra. They're Claricians. They basically are abilities that can like use their psi abilities to like see, in a sense, project their minds and be able to see vast distances. The Chitra Banu is the psi order that could control, in a sense, like nuclear forces, and it gets into like in this, it gets into like how they were ended up destroyed because they were considered to have gone rogue, but like there's a whole conspiracy and everything, and so with them, and like the Upeo ended up disappearing too in the timeline. So like you only got like the 6 orders. So the Scoopleans, they're based in Europe, and they're pretty much like doctors. So like they have like a psi abilities that let them heal people. So like in the sense of like D&D, think of them as like and the sci-fi version in this group as clerics type of deal. So they're the healers. So they go into like here the actual definite like the whole, they give a whole background on like each of the 6 orders that are still in existence in the year 2120. So this first section is basically like the background information like, on the orders and like the whole timeline. So like and it also gives like the aberrants I mentioned, which are pretty much the evil guys that, like I said, in like the early 21st, late 20th century came in existence, and then pretty much went mad with their power and ended up going into the aberrant war, what it's called, in like the 21st century. And of course, like I said, in 2061, China ended the war and became like pretty much the superpower. And so like, this, in a sense, is kind of like a post-apocalyptic type sci-fi RPG that takes place in the 22nd century, and of course we've expanded to the stars, so we actually have colonies on the moon, and like Mars is starting to be terraformed. So like and with the timeline also in here, it gets into the whole like it gives the whole background on the whole timeline and everything. So not not only does it give like an actual like time like dates and stuff like right here like I showed, but also in the previous pages it goes into like in depth like the whole background on like the set and everything, and so it also gets into the whole like the different nations like Africa now is like in a sense like while China is the superpower, Africa is also like a power and powerful. Like they got a lot of nations that are powerful. So like they have the what's called the UAN, the United African Nations. So in a sense, it's kind of flipped now, and so like America and Europe aren't the dominant powers. It's pretty much China and Africa that are the powers that be. So like also like, in each section also goes in like the different like continents, and like and it gives like reach a good description on the background of each continent. So like here like Australia, in a sense where legionnaires that I mentioned are stationed is also explained, and of course like it gives background on like the state of Europe and their nations. Of course like you can see here with America is like totally different. So you don't have like the United States like you end up having what's the FSA, the Federated States of America. So there was like in a sense like through the timeline like the grain belts was destroyed in America by like one of the aberrants, and so like America ended up invading Canada and Mexico, and like of course Quebec now is its own independent nation, but of course they tend to back the FSA, which is the Federated States of America, and that they each have like different like in a sense provinces, sort of like what you see in Canada. So it's in a sense broken up into different ones, and of course you can see like here like Florida went bye bye, and of course in the political issues nowadays, which is a whole different subject. I'm sure a lot of people would see that as a good thing. So, but like I said, with this back on topic, it gets into like the whole different like background information on each of the continents, and like it gives you like an idea of like the state of like every single continent, and, like each particular order. So like in here, like for instance, like South America, where the Norca, your James Bond type of scions are located. So it gives descriptions on like each of the countries that are in it. So like, you kind of get like a good, in a sense, background on the whole the continents in the world. And of course, it goes into depth on like a space, and so like I said, like we actually have like a based on in this one, we actually have colonies on the moon, and it goes into like descriptions of back gives even more further information and background on like each place. So like you can see like gives a decent picture of like one of the like, colonies that we have on the moon, and of course the Israel the farseers, in a sense, like the science that can use their ability to like look over vast distances are actually based on the moon. So like of course like it goes into description on like the different on all the planets, and it gives like what's going on in each planet. So like you go through like the whole solar system, Mercury, Venus, and of course like it does give like a brief description on Earth, even though as you can see before, it actually goes into depth more on like each continent and everything. And of course, it also talks about Mars, where I said they're starting to terraform it and everything. So like it goes into that, and of course, we also got like mining facilities in the asteroid belt. So like in a sense, like it also goes into depth, like even further out, where like Jupiter, where we're starting to mine minerals and resources from the moons of Jupiter. So it gives, in a sense, like the background information not just on the Earth and the continents, but also background information on like the planets in our solar system as well. So like, of course, it does a brief description on the outer three planets, and of course, like we're just in this set, and they're now just starting to like get into the outer planets, and of course, it's kind of hard to get to, and of course, it also having like having in a sense with the teleporters being able to travel vast distances, like I mentioned the Nightcrawler character in Marvel comics, like that they're able to teleport like that. So we now having to start interstellar colonies, and so like it gets into like descriptions of like the like in a sense your exoplanets, and like how we're starting to like colonize those. And of course, like I said, we met aliens. So like one of the alien races that they met was called the Qin, after like one of the Chinese dynasties, and this is their home planet. So like we created an embassy on their world. They created an embassy on our moon. So like in a sense, like we've actually had first contact with the aliens, and of course like there's alien races called the Chromatics that like in a sense attack to like a Pearl Harbor attack type attack on us, and so it goes in description on them. So like it also gets into like other off worlds. So like this whole uh, first part is like the in a sense the background information for it, and so like in here it also gives like even further information like the corporations and stuff, and so like and of course like I said, like with the Chin, like the alien races that we were able to have like a friendly relationship, like it goes into explanations of the actual aliens that we've come in contact with so far. So like I mentioned, the Chromatics, where they pretty much like are hostile type of aliens that attacked us in like a Pearl Harbor type attack on one of our settlements. So like of course like they also like you can see like golden background information on how we were able to capture some of them and do like in a sense like a experience. And of course there's the coalition, which is like they had like this arc or whatever show up, and of course there's not much like known about them. So because like this arc just kind of showed up and disappeared, and like we raced at this set contact, and of course like the whole situation is kind of sketchy. So they don't like it's just like a brief encounter with this coalition, which is like what they understand is like a kind of like a sort of like the Covenant in Halo. It's that type of deal. So there's not much known about that. So then you actually get into like the black and white, where like you actually go through it gets into the actual mechanics of the game. So like it gets into like the whole actual RPG type part of it and everything. So what it actually this system is actually like completely different. So like it actually uses like a different type of character sheet. So instead of using all the different types of dice and everything, you're just using D10s. And so as you can see, we have three different sections for attributes, and like they're basically broken up into physical, mental, and social. So you can see that like you can have like your strength, dexterity, stamina for physical, perception, intelligence, and wits for your mental, appearance, manipulation, and charisma for your social attributes. And so these are based on like 1 to 5 scale. So they have like a 2 with being average. So like when like you're creating characters and everything, what you do is you pick your primary, secondary, and tertiary abilities. So like you can for instance, using like the Legionnaires, like your super soldiers, like what you want to do is like have like your physical attributes as your primary ones. Like, but if you're going to play someone maybe like the Orgitech, like your people that control electricity, and like are basically your hackers and stuff, you might want to do like your mental attributes as your primary. So like it's broken up into that, so that way like I said, it's slightly different than games like D&D, where everything's like based off like 1 to 18 type of deal, and you get modifiers. This like the way it works is like the higher your attribute, the more dice you roll. So like for example, like with the strength, like in the if you have like a say you're like someone like a super strong, and you have 5 in strength, and like your might, you're using to trying to break something, like or like in a sense intent, like use it to bend the bar type of deal, you'd use might. And say you have like a ranking of 3 in that might ability, you take your 5 strength and then like your 3 might, and that's how many 10-sided dice you would roll. And like successes are based on 7, 8, 9, or 10. So you'd have to have like so many successes to be able to in a sense to succeed on like something. So like using that like bending that bar example, like you'd have like 8 dice, 8 10-sided dice to roll, and like you might have to have like say a total of like 4 successes, and so like if you roll all eight dice and you end up getting five of them that are 7, 8, 9, or 10, then you would succeed. So it's a different type of system than like your D&D, but like for this it definitely works. It's more or less in a sense streamlined for this system. So like in a sense it breaks it up, like I said, into like the 9 different attributes, and then like you got your abilities underneath them. So like the way that works is like going back to the strength and might example. So like if you didn't have the might ability and you only had like strength or whatever, so you default to your attributes. So like for instance, another example would be firearms. If you've never had any training in firearms, since again points in that ability, you default to like your dexterity. So like if you had like say like a 3 in dexterity and like you've never had experience with firearms and you pick up a gun, you default to your attribute and everything. So that's the way the attributes and skills work in a quick nutshell. So going back to like the flipping through, so like you in a sense are able to like kind of, it follows the same kind of concept as like a character creation in other books. Like here it gives like a quick concept of like the character creation. So like you choose like an origin, like like where your kind of character originated from, like and you choose like what's the aptitude. So like that aptitude is like what psi abilities that you're going to use. So like whether you're going to be like a legionnaire, one of the Norco, or like a James Bond type of character, or you're going to be like the electrokinesis, the hacker type of ability where you can use electricity and stuff for Scion. That's where you pick that, and of course it gives like a description, like a page description where you can actually go to get like a better idea of that nature. Like that goes into like what kind of like type what kind of person are you? Like, are you like the rebel, or are you like a survivor, or are you a leader or a follower? That kind of gets into like the nature of like the basic nature of your character. And then of course allegiance is, where do you own allegiance to? Do you belong to one of the psi orders, like the legionnaires, the electrokinesis, or the Norca that I've mentioned? And so you start off with that, and then like you go into like I've mentioned, like showing the character sheet. You see like you selecting your attributes. You're choosing your primary, secondary, tertiary. So like what you do with like your points is you have 7, 5, and 3 to kind of like kind of like a point for point basis, where like for instance like using like the physical attributes as a primary ability. So you have like 7 points between to be able to expand between strength, dexterity, and stamina. So like in a sense you could going back to the character sheet, like with the primary ability, like you could in a sense put the 7. So you have 7 points to expend between these 3 abilities. So you could put like in a sense like a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you could have like 3, 3, and 4 type of deal. That's how like that works. And you do the same thing for the secondary and tertiary abilities. And of course then you start you get your actually abilities. So like that's basically like your abilities are stuff you've been trained on. So you get 10 points to choose between those, plus you get like an additional 13. So like this goes into like how to create a character. So like you got like a background. So like in a sense like backgrounds are stuff that like you maybe have access to resources, like money. Maybe you have like maybe you actually have like equipment too that you start off with. Like maybe you have like a freighter, like a space freighter type of deal. If you had like a lot of points in like the equipment background. So that backgrounds are kind of like stuff that you get to kind of flesh out your character. So like I said, you could get like resources, equipment. You could have a bunch of allies, or like or background known as contacts, where you like a bunch of people like in different fields of expertise, where you can like call up and get information from. And of course like it gets into like the with the most the aptitude, like you have like three different abilities. Like using the Legionnaire as an example, they have they can control fire, ice, and they can also control telekinesis. So like you'd have like a 3 points to be able to control to choose like your pretty much your psionic abilities. And then in the finishing touches, like willpower is like something you could use as points that you can have used for automatic successes type of deal. So you could use like a will point to get like an extra automatic success to make sure you can succeed in the roll. Psi is like a ability that you use to actually use your psionic ability. So like for instance, like say you had like a five ability in psi, you could use 5 points to actually use those aptitudes that you picked up and everything. So like for instance, like the Legionnaire, like if you took 3 points and like say like your fire abilities, you'd use so many points to be able to use one of those abilities type of deal. So like they actually have like a slightly different movement uh, concept than like a D&D, where like D&D you tend to like move like 30 feet. They actually do this in meters, and so it breaks that down differently. And of course you also have bonus points that you can use to like maybe increase your attributes, abilities, get maybe backgrounds. Specialties are something like your attributes or your abilities that you might be specialized in. So like for instance, like if you had the pilot ability, you might specialize in like be able to like pilot a starfighter type of deal. And so like you have bonus points that you can use to build kind of flesh out your character. So it goes into like depth on like the whole character creation in this early part, and gives like examples like and it actually breaks down the attributes and like how like each one would in a sense like explanation. So like for instance, like here like with strength, it's like it gives a description on like your attribute score. So like if you had like a 1 in strength, it'd kind of be poor. 2 is considered average for every attribute. So like you can see as you go up, like yeah, it gives descriptions like pretty much like how strong you actually are type of deal. So like it gives like descriptions on like so you know like get an idea like how like the ability the attribute works. And so like and it goes into like the same thing, like the abilities, gives descriptions on the abilities, and also ranks them from like a 1 to 5. Like and abilities are considered like that you're something you're trained in. So like you had like you go from not trained at all to all the way to becoming a master in like something like using the pilot ability as an example. You could not be skilled at all as being like a pilot, whatever. Or then you could, on the other end, you could be in a sense like you're a master starfighter. Think of like using Star Wars as an example. Use someone like Luke Skywalker or like Wedge Antilles and like when they're doing the Death Star run, those people would be like like in a sense like master starfighter pilots type of deal. So this goes into like a description of like the actual abilities, and gives you like ideas on how to use them. And of course, it also gets into like backgrounds that I've mentioned. So like for instance, like Cipher is like you could be someone like who like deletes like a bunch of like stuff electronically. So like yeah, you could go from like no background at all in this, and like basically like anyone could pull up like through the internet type of deal. You could pull up your story, or you could go all the way to the 5 where like you have like no information on the internet. So as far as the internet is concerned, you're someone who doesn't exist. So that's how like the backgrounds work. And so like it goes into like you could also have like influence. So like think of like going from like the 0 to 5. Like the 0, you're basically a nobody. 5 influence, you could be someone like a politician at the national or international level, or like a well-known actor internationally. So everything is based on like a 1 to 5 scale. So it further goes into like also explaining like the willpower that I mentioned, how you can use like points, willpower points to get an automatic success type of deal. And so like the more willpower you have, the more chances you have to be able to get automatic successes. And of course it also goes into like the psi that I mentioned, like to use your psi abilities. And so like it also like this is on a 1 to 10 scale. So like the basically like if you have like a 1 score, you're basically not non-scion, which you can create characters as like a non-scion character. And they do have later on in this, they actually have a way to make a non-psionic character. And of course, like the more psi you have, the more powerful you are with your psi abilities type of deal. So yeah, this in a sense like it actually breaks down like all the abilities for like all the groups that you can do. So like the vitakinesis are in a sense like your doctors, uh, your cleric versions in this game, your telepaths, your legionnaires. Like I said, they can control ice and fire, and they got telekinesis. You're basically your super soldiers, like your Delta 6 and the SEAL teams. You got like your hackers. You got your basically your clairvoyance, and like of course the biokinesis, the Norca. You got your James Bond type of character. So they each have like 3 different uh, in a sense, groups of psi abilities that you can get from like and basically a scale 1 to 5 that you can get abilities in each of the in a sense the aptitudes type of deal. So like it goes into like a detail of like each of the abilities for all three ability groups for each psi order, so that this one goes into depth on each of the abilities, so that way when you're deciding on when you're creating a character and you decide like what you want to do for your abilities, this gives you good description on like what abilities you want to do. So this goes into pretty in depth into like the actual psi abilities, and of course it also gets into here in this next chapter. It starts getting into the actual like role playing, like sort of like the later chapters in your like a D&D player's handbook, where like it gives like your combat uh, uh, how to run combat, and like it's the same thing like here, like it gives you like ideas on how to use your abilities, and like and how to run combat. So, and this is the later chapters, and so like it also gives like a description here on like how to take damage, and it's sort of like how the hit points and work in D&D. So it gives descriptions on the different types of damage, and like and pretty much whatever like type of like encounter that you would face in the book. And of course you can also like buy equipment and everything. So like it gives descriptions on like you can see here like melee weapons. It also gives descriptions and pictures of like the different like types of guns, like bio laser pistol, like basically like something like your typical handgun, and it gives like a description on like different types of symbols. Now there's a thing called like biotech, basically like a technology that's grown. So like think of like a living organisms that are actually equipment, and then of course you got the symbol for the what's known as hard tech, like typical technology that we see in our world on a day-to-day basis, sort of computers and typical guns and stuff like that. So they actually have the 2 different types of technology in this game as well. So, and of course, like I said, it gives like pictures of the different types of guns that you can use, and it goes into actual uh, different types of like clothes, and like it talks about like a heavy metal too, like omanium. It's like something that's like in a sense titanium and steel on steroids type of deal. Like it's 10 times stronger than steel, but it's pretty much as light as titanium. And so it also uh, gets like into like actual computers and like laptops, and like you also got like in a sense like avatars. Think of like things like Siri, uh, pretty much like Siri on steroids. And the picture here is actually like computers that you can place on your wrist, so or your forearm. So think of like a miniaturized laptop you can just place on your forearm type of deal. So like the computers have to, in a sense, become better. And of course, with it, like I said, being set in the early 22nd century. So it also gets into like descriptions of the different types of vehicles that you can buy, like your tanks and your motorcycles, cars, and of course also like for instance, like it gives a picture here of like a one of those, in instance, tanks or whatever that you can get, and it also goes into like an aircraft and spacecraft that you can buy. It gives like descriptions on each of them, and of course like gives a picture of like one of the starfighters that you can use. And also gives pictures of like one of the like frigates that you can eventually use in game, or that's just a picture of just one of them, but there's a lot more. And so it also gives like a picture of like this is a jump ship. So like the teleporters like it disappeared, so they had to come up with like a whole new jump ship so they could in a sense transport themselves to the outer colonies and everything with the disappearance of the teleporters. So that, and they also go into in detail about that and everything. So like, and of course like just like a DM chapter in the player's handbook, it also gives like a chapter on like how to like do like become like the game master or dungeon master, or like a narrator, as in some games they're called. So like basically like it gives like a description on how to actually run the game. And so it also gives you kind of like back here like like the templates on characters you can use, like in a sense like NPCs. Like it gives you a template on like how to use like an aberrant for a villain, and also gives you like templates on like basic templates on characters you could use for as like your typical NPCs. So, and most, it pretty much has like a glossary back here in the back to help define the concepts and the ideas of the games. So I was introduced to this game way back in like 97, 98. So this is probably one of if not my favorites sci-fi RPGs. Now they got like not only do they have this, but they got like a bunch of other books. Like they got like a technology guide. They also have like a bunch of like other books that you can pick up too. So like for instance, like they got like a adventure book that you can pick up to get things started. They got like the technology guide that I mentioned, which like a picture on here like shows like basically mechs, which are kind of like your walking tanks type of deal like this. So the fans of BattleTech will probably like have fun with that. And of course like they've got like the adventure books that like the alien first and second one that you can that deals with the aliens that I mentioned. And of course they got like the whole like a 3-part series as well that gets into like into the back. You can run in the background. So like that's pretty much like what this whole book is based on. Now you can use that adventure and which like it gives like even further background, like where they want the the game to go, or you could just like completely ignore it and like and kind of do your own. So like yeah, this book does have like a section in the back right here where like it actually goes through all those adventure books, and like gives like like I said, the background information on like where they want the game to go. But like anything, you can use that, ignore it, run your own, do whatever. So like I said, this is probably like one of, if not my favorite sci-fi game that's out there. And like I would definitely love to get back into it eventually. So like I'll probably see if I can get like a bunch of people in my area back into it. So like we'll have to wait and see. Until next time.